What is going on YouTube, and welcome back to another Wuthering Waves video. Let's talk about droids. No, not these ones. Not these ones, but these ones. You see, just a few days ago, we got the version 1.2 developer log, which outlined a ton of changes they're making to the game. And one of those changes was the addition of a utility tool called the shooter Hoverdroid. This is obviously great news because I can't count the amount of times I will be exploring a new region and have to stop, go into the team select menu, and switch in my at the time very under-leveled zhezhi. The droid just makes the overall process less tedious and is a quality of life that I can definitely get behind. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. What I'm worried about is that a lot of us are missing the forest for the trees here. The way I'm looking and thinking about this Hoverdroid is that this little Hoverdroid can open up so many new pathways and styles of event content, boss fight mechanics, and most importantly, collabs. And I just feel like not enough people are shining a light on this. So let me give you my thoughts and my rationale on why I think this could be a bigger deal for Wuthering Waves than a lot of people first think. Remember, if you enjoy this kind of content, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Your support means the world to me and it keeps this channel growing. Now without further ado, let's get on with the video. The whole starting point and why I'm choosing to fixate on this Hoverdroid over every other thing Kuro showed us in that developer note is very simple. Everything from the Hoverdroid's design, its animations, to its implementation in the game is another step and another piece of evidence for me that Kuro games are just massive Nier Automata fanboys. I mean, you can't deny the uncanny similarities between the Hoverdroid and the pods from Nier Automata. And this is definitely not the first case of Kuro showing their love for that franchise. Their previous game, Punishing Grey Raven, had a very similar premise to Nier Automata. Humanity has fled to space after an alien machine threat overpowered them many years ago in the past, and now war androids are being sent in a continuous war effort to reclaim the Earth. Sounds pretty similar, right? Not to mention, that same game ended up having a collab with Nier Automata themselves. So it's pretty clear that Kuro Games has a lot of love and draws a lot of inspiration from Nier Automata. But what does that mean for Wuthering Waves? Well, there's a lot of pathways that I plan to elaborate more on later in the video, but let's start with the big one. The introduction of the Hoverdroid puts Wuthering Waves one step closer to a potential Nier Automata collab, and also sets up Wuthering Waves for collabs with other big name action RPG games as well as other games just in general. The thing is, with collabs, especially collabs between games, is that you want to establish a good amount of crossover value. This could be anything from the genre and the vibe of these franchises to the aesthetic and gameplay style. That way, fans of either franchise or IP can go, oh, they also have XYZ, maybe I'll also give this game a try. So by capitalizing on the similarities between the two IPs, you give more reasons to the fans of both franchises to potentially try out the other and become fans of it. So let's go back to a potential Nier Automata and Wuthering Waves collab. How clear is the potential crossover value here? How well would a Nier collab fit within the world, the aesthetic, and the gameplay systems of Wuthering Waves? Well, let me break it down into several key segments. Let's start with the story and the vibe. Much of Nier Automata's story is told in forest locales, desert regions, and run-down city ruins. Although the lighting and color palettes in Wuthering Waves don't exactly match, they have a lot of similar locales as well. The Sea of Flames region near the Infernal Rider boss has a lot of that city ruins aesthetic. Certain parts of the Dim Forest region match that rainforest aesthetic, and even though Wuthering Waves doesn't have its own dedicated desert region yet, 2 out of 3 is still pretty solid to me. The story of Wuthering Waves isn't as similar to Nier Automata as Punishing Grey Raven, but we can still see a lot of recurring themes and inspiration here. Both games, and I mean Wuthering Waves and Nier Automata, are set in post-apocalyptic worlds caused by the emergence of a mysterious threat that forced humanity to develop safe havens for them to live and fight back from. And both of these games have specialized personnel that we follow as they serve as part of the main fighting force against this threat. Not to mention, in Wuthering Waves, the elusive realm also acts as a gate to an otherworldly dimension that contains different dreams and memories. So if Kuro is that worried that certain elements of Nier Automata could break the narrative cohesion of Wuthering Waves, they still have the elusive realm to fall back on. Because who's to say that the rover can't just dream up an encounter with 2B and 9S? Now I want to talk about combat. At a baseline level, it's pretty easy to tell that Wuthering Waves and Nier Automata have a good amount of similarities in this department. They both revolve around fast-paced action combat with a heavy emphasis on dodge mechanics and combos with varied animations. But if we dig just a little bit deeper, we can actually see that a lot of the pre-existing gameplay and combat systems in Wuthering Waves are very similar to the mechanics and forms of combat that we see in Nier Automata. So what do I mean by this? Aside from your standard third-person third-person hack and slash, combat in Nier Automata likes to switch things up to reflect different game genres. They have combat segments that are top-down bullet hells, they transform their hack and slash combat into a side-scroller, and they also have mech battles that incorporate both the slashing and the shooting. But what's important here is that if you look at the different combat segments in Nier Automata, you'd find something in Wuthering Waves that can closely replicate it. The third-person action combat is a no-brainer, and now that we have the Hoverdroid, it opens up the possibility of replicating a lot of that bullet hell combat segment. The Ling Yang companion quest also featured a side-scroller segment that's very similar to Nier Automata's, and the mech battles can be done very similarly to how they did the chase fight scene in the Morning Ike's exploration quest, and the same goes for the boss fights and the mechanics. Let's take the Simone boss fight from Nier Automata as an example. A lot of its mechanics feature energy waves and missile attacks that you need to dodge, but these are mechanics that you've seen before if you've ever done the hologram boss fights for the Morning Ikes and the Monkey. So by now it's pretty clear that there's a lot of crossover value in terms of their stories, genres, aesthetic, and how we actually play and engage with their respective combat. So now the big final question is the collab characters. How would these Nier Automata collab characters work in Wuthering Waves? Well, I think they can definitely work. I think it'd be pretty simple actually, and that's because of two big reasons. The first is that because the main trio of Nier Automata have already appeared in Kuro's other game Punishing Grey Raven, Kuro already has experience translating a lot of their movesets and abilities into functional kits and animations in their own games, so I don't imagine it would be an extremely difficult process doing the same thing for Wuthering Waves. The second is that the weapon variety in Wuthering Waves is very just enough for each of the trio to use popular weapons from the Nier universe and for it to make sense in Wuthering Waves' gameplay. Just imagine 2B as a sword user in Wuthering Waves with Virtuous Contract as her signature weapon. Just imagine A2 as a Broadblade user with her Type 4.0 blade. Just imagine 9S performing hacking attacks with a Rectifier as his signature weapon. The bottom line is that Wuthering Waves already has so many elements in its game that create a very convincing crossover value with Nier Automata. And now that we're getting this Hoverdroid, it speaks to me that we're another step, another similarity, another piece of crossover closer to a potential Nier Automata collab. And to be completely honest, it doesn't even have to be Nier Automata as the collab. I've seen collabs happen before between IPs that were way less similar than this, but the point is that I think collabs are always welcome as a way to bring eyes, discussion, and engagement with the game. And so having unique in-game tools like the Hoverdroid just broadens and opens up the possibilities and crossover value for other potential collabs. I could list off a bunch of other potential collab ideas like Hollow Knight, Cuphead, but you get the point. Now for some of you watching, you might be thinking, well, collabs are nice and all, but that's not really a permanent part of the game, nor is it really something that we can expect to happen very often. And I agree, but I think a lot of the points I raised about a possible Nier Automata collab can also be extended to a lot of the permanent content we get in Wuthering Waves. Now that we have this Hoverdroid, it opens up so many new pathways for potential boss mechanics and event content. Every time I challenged the hologram, I always wondered why they didn't utilize the toolbar more in combat. Aside from using the grapple hook to not get totally cooked by the heron, it kind of feels like a forgettable feature. But I think it'd be a very interesting and interactive concept if they introduced a boss fight where you have to utilize the shooter drone to fulfill a certain mechanic. Like maybe the boss would spawn 4 poles in the cardinal points of the arena, and the best strategy would be to simply shoot them down using the shooter drone before the main boss does a big nuke attack. Or just imagine a combat event where you can select modifiers to your shooter droid to either help you break the stagger bar of your enemies faster, or to modify the shooter drone so that it groups enemies more easily. Or they could just go all out and create an event that leans very heavily into that top-down view bullet hell gameplay. They've done it before in Punishing Grey Raven, so I expect it to be something that they're at least familiar with and are willing to do at some point in the future. So whether it be future collabs or new styles of event content, what started off as a neat quality of life change to help exploration could actually be a major stepping stone in opening up different ways to play and enjoy the game. And I think if Kuro decides to execute on this, these new pieces of content that really lean into utilizing the Hoverdroid will be very welcomed, because variety and freshness is always so important in these content service games. It will eventually get tiring and repetitive if we keep having kill these groups of enemies events, so it's important that Kuro spices things up and innovates. But I don't think Kuro should do the opposite and start introducing a ton of new utility tools for this very reason. At the end of the day, these are first and foremost meant to be quality of life tools. In the long term, Kuro games could try and introduce just enough new gadgets to open up the possibility of collabing with games of other genres, but they need to do that while striking a delicate balance of introducing that crossover value with a new game genre, not oversaturating the amount of utility gadgets at your disposal, and actually making a meaningful quality of life improvement to Wuthering Waves. Anyways, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. Let me know down in the comments what you think of this topic. Please consider leaving a like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye!